Hello, it's Agbor Kumba bringing you news from the Roaring Twenties. Today we will specifically be talking about the topic of immigration. I would like to invite our first guest, Tom, to enlighten us on the Golden Door.
Following the war, arguments developed saying that immigrants could threaten the nation's culture. But there was a larger argument about their negative economic effect. The unions of the American Federation of Labor, among others, feared that immigrants would flood the workplace, causing wages for American workers to go down.
Quotas, a limited or fixed number or amount of people or thing in particular.
In the 1920s, most Americans were for immigration restriction in some form. There was a belief that there should not be large influxes of immigrants from any particular place, instead, keeping new immigration proportionate to the current demographic.
The Golden Door was known as New York because so many people came through its ports as immigrants to the United States.
In 1924, Congress dramatically reduced immigration to 2% of each nationality that had been recorded in the 1890 census, not allowing in any Asians. For many, the Golden Door was closed, as getting into America and gaining citizenship became much less feasible.
Thank you for that information, Tom. Next up, we have Reggie with the Palmer Raids.
In the 1920s, a period known as the Red Scare, people started developing fears about communism and socialism, which, according to Foner, was inspired by the post-war strike wave, where there were many mass strikes by workers and unions, and by the social tension and fears generated by the Russian Revolution.
Socialism, a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Communism, a political theory derived from Karl Marx advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs.
This fear led to Attorney General Mitchell Palmer conducting raids called the Palmer Raids to raid offices of radicals and labor organizations because he believed that because of communism, tongues of revolutionary heat were licking the altars of churches, leaping into the belfry of the school bell, crawling into the sacred corners of American homes, seeking to replace marriage vows with libertine laws, and burning up the foundations of society. More than 5,000 alleged communists were arrested, most without warrants, and were held for months without charge, and over 500 illegal immigrants were deported. Palmer claimed the raids were helping to rid the country of moral perverts and hysterical, neurasthenic women abound in communism. He also said that even after these raids, his work was far from over, and that there were over 300,000 dangerous communists still in the country.
Thanks, Reggie. Next, we have Evan on the Sacco and Vanzetti case.
In addition to the Palmer raids, the trial of Sacco and Vanzetti proved to be another instance of anti-anarchist sentiment.
Anarchism, belief in the abolition of all governments and the organization of society on a voluntary, cooperative basis without recourse to force or compulsion.
Both were, first and foremost, Italian immigrants and were also anarchists. They had been known to be followers of Luigi Gallini, an anarchist who organized bombings to support their cause. Gallinists like Sacco and Vanzetti are constantly suspected of being responsible for raids, so it came as no surprise when the two were arrested for a robbery of Slater and Morrill Shoe Company, during which they allegedly murdered a guard and paymaster. On trial, there was little evidence to support their conviction. In fact, the ballistics evidence proved the bullets could not have been fired from Sacco's pistol, but the two were put to death by electric chair anyways. On his deathbed, Vanzetti was recorded saying, "I wish to tell you I am innocent and never connected with any crime. I wish to forgive some people for what they are now doing to me." A report filed by Governor Fuller, who presided over the trial, stated that complaint has been made that the defendants were prosecuted and convicted because they were anarchists. Their counsel decided to attribute their actions and conduct to the fact that they were anarchists. In previous years, the Supreme Court had upheld the right to a foreigner's nationality and culture in cases such as Mayer v. Nebraska.
The Mayer v. Nebraska case was a U.S. Supreme Court case that held that a 1919 Nebraska law restricting foreign language education violated the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment.
That they were convicted and suspected solely because they were anarchists point to the Red Scare being the reason, rather than their immigration status, and shown how they were seen to fit a stereotype that socialists, communists, and anarchists alike are capable only of violence.
It's always a pleasure having you here on the show, Evan. But last but not least, we have Maya talking on the German sentiment.
In the 1920s, alcohol was a large part of the American culture, being used for entertainment and celebration. However, on January 16th of 1920, alcohol was banned, which was also known as prohibition.
Prohibition. A law that prevented the manufacture and sale of alcohol, especially in the U.S., between 1920 and 1933.
Congress viewed drinking alcohol as unpatriotic and in support of Germany, due to the many beer companies being owned by Germans. However, due to the ban on alcohol, people started to smuggle it and create speakeasies. Also, as a result of prohibition, it created organized crime. For example, Al Capone, a bootlegger, was glorified and served as inspiration for popular movie characters such as Little Caesar and Scarface. It also inspired flapper girls in how they would wear flasks as a part of their costumes. Although prohibition was greatly opposed by the people, it lowered death from alcohol by 80% and could be linked to the decrease of domestic violence. In all, Americans thought that by instilling prohibition, it would Americanize immigrants because of its patriotism and not supporting German beer companies. The Prohibition Act can even be related to today and how there are debates on the legalization of marijuana causing illegal activity and opposition from the people.